Cool. So yeah, like I've mentioned before, the goal is really just to have a type of conversational chat. We mostly focus in most of the talks about technical details, new exciting research results, but I think what's really lost there is a lot of the personality and the people behind the results. So that's why I thought it would be nice to talk to a senior and respected researcher like Nicolò. Nicolò is here in Milan. He's at simultaneously the University of Milan and Milan Polytechnic, our wonderful host. He's the co-director of Ellis Milan, which is also our amazing host, so thank you for that. And yeah, I won't go into a full biography. I think many of his results have already been mentioned today in the talks earlier, including his book. I looked at the website. It seems to be called Burning, Flames, and, Perdition, Burning, and Flames, right?
Yeah. That's right. That's a nasty version of the book.
It's actually called Learning, Prediction, and Games. Anyway, so I think one interesting question for any researcher is trying to understand like how we got to this point. You know, you're one of the most respected researchers in learning theory nowadays, but I assume it wasn't always the case. Like, how did you start getting interested in computer science, say even growing up? Did you know, like growing up as a kid, that you like math, or how did you start doing an undergrad in CS?
Yeah, okay, I really loved computers. And I was one of the earliest nerds, probably, because that was the beginning of the 80s. And there weren't many personal computers around. But my dad was working in a multinational computer science company. It was more on the hardware part. But anyway, it sort of, was a bit condescending. Actually, it was a bit, not encouraged me, but, when he saw there was a little bit of passion on my behalf, he eventually agreed to buy me a PET 2001. This was like the ancestor of the Commodore 64. And it was like, it's like 8 megahertz CPU with ridiculous RAM and no hard disk. There was a cassette. And but that was great. I mean, I was super happy, and I would program video games, stuff for doing music and other things. I even sold some of the programs, and then I was kind of of course, an outcast in my group, because at that time nobody else could care less about. Not even coding, but about computers at all. But still at some point that they even my friends figured that gotta be something cool about it, because this guy can do things. I mean, I was showing them these little video games I would program, so they would like it.
How old were you at the time of this?
That was high school.
High school, gotcha.
Yeah, high school. Early high school, actually. So I was like 15 years old, 16 years old. And then my dad told me, okay, maybe, so because computer science at that time, it didn't exist in Milan, but basically they started the undergraduate program 2 years before I could enter. But my dad told me, okay, maybe, to be on the safe side, just enroll in physics, which is a bit broader. And then, you can sort of, hedge a little bit and see what are your chances. So I, dutifully enrolled in physics, and after 1 week I switched to computer science. So I did the thing he asked me to do, but it didn't last for long. And so that was the thing. It was a very early passion. So coding, the first time I did, this is super nerdy, I don't know, okay, but like the first time I did that, in order traversal of a tree was with the recursive program was like, wow, this is like so cool. This is amazing. So that was definitely something that I had in me, and so there was no issue about it. I wanted to do computer science.
Taking a step a bit further back, like when you were doing stuff in high school, even was that like? How did you learn at the point? Like nowadays you can just Google whatever you want. There's lots of resources, but did you have a manual, or did you just invent it yourself, or like what did you do?
Yeah, Right. So people, so this is like a, how do you guys would meet each other without a mobile phone? Yeah, this is right. No, there were lots of there were fanzines, right? So little booklets that you would find in computer shops. They were Xeroxed, photocopied, and you know they would come out once a month. There were bulletin boards that came later. No, there was these things, so paper stuff, written by aficionados that would, and they were actually specialized on specific models, but there were so few models around of computers that would be okay. And then I would get the actual hardware manuals. So at that time, you had a computer, you knew everything about a computer. Basically, all the addresses where to start hardware routines. And you would directly write in the screen memory in order to do graphics. It was something super primitive, but you felt really like you were dominating the machine fully. So yes, pretty different experience.
What was your most memorable game that you made in high school or program in high school?
Oh yeah, this is like it was like I think the Mad Mosquito was kind of a mosquito that you had to oh my God.
Sorry, I'm taking it back here.
And, okay, there was another one like Battlestar Galactica or Space Wars kind of things where there were little spaceships with hyperspace jumps and stuff like that. And I remember I was very proud because there was like an initial opening music with the dun 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 kind of like 2001 Space Odyssey opening music, and I had a friend who could play piano to do it for me. So we had that opening thing score. It was like amazing.
I see. It was like recorded, and you could play it back. Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yes, at the opening of the game. Yeah.
Nice.
Yes, I was very proud.
I feel like often people get into computer science kind of primarily from computing side, and some people primarily from mathematics. You've described it a lot more from the computing side, but how were you into math in high school?
Right. No, I wasn't particularly proficient in math. I was okay. I was fine. I was not like the best in my class, definitely. I was reasonable, and it was like a slow process there. So I started to, I went through, I enrolled in computer science, and the math part started later when I got interested in learning theory. So from the most part of my studies was mostly computer science. Definitely not software engineering. I didn't feel particularly attracted towards software engineering or databases. I was more attracted towards algorithms, definitely, and data structures. So maybe there was a little bit of something around there. And the other thing is that at that time, if you attended computer science, you would get a hardcore, teaching of math. So we had Calculus 1, Calculus 2, abstract algebra, linear algebra. So that was definitely a lot of exposure. And I didn't expect that. At the beginning, it was like, why are they teaching this? And but then somehow it got under my skin. So and then came out later.
Sure, that makes sense. So that's sort of like getting into computer science in the first place. And once you switched to CS, did you know like you want to go down a research career? Was there some point where it really awakened that like research is really cool and that's what I want to do in the future?
No. Okay. So there is no linear path. Is always life is always okay. This is kind of off, but life is mostly a random walk. If I look back, it's a random walk. So I didn't have anything planned, and So one thing is that people in this country tend to live with their parents way too long. So I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to get out of my parents' place, not because they were nasty at me or mean. In any way, they were very sweet parents, but I felt it was like the right thing to do. And so I wanted to get some done. It's not super easy, and everything is expensive. So although my master's thesis advisor was encouraging me to get into PhD school, I was very reluctant because I knew that would have prevented me from moving out, because just renting a place here is crazy. It's a crazy amount of money. And indeed, actually, I started to work with some friends in a startup. This was at the end of graduate studies, before entering PhD. But then, there are some life twists, and something unexpected happened. So my grandma died. And however, so what this has to do? Well, there was some money, and my dad said, okay, you know what? I can get you an apartment with this money. So then you have more freedom to do your choices. And then he said, okay, now I can move out, so I will go to PhD school. So it was absolutely random.
Interesting. And what, rest your soul, but what do you think? Do you think you would have done something different if your grandmother didn't pass away at the time?
Yeah, I think, well, nobody knows, right? It's totally counterfactual, as everybody in this room knows. So who knows? I didn't like, I was sort of a little bit engaged in this startup, but startups at that time weren't that exciting as now. So I don't know what would have happened. I was getting some money, which was okay, but I was definitely more interested in, I already felt some pull from the richer side, although this money thing, this moving out thing was sort of blocking me from doing that. Yeah.
Makes sense. Actually, jumping to present day a little bit, like it seems like every other professor has a startup nowadays. That's have you been tempted to relive the startup days or get involved? Have you, or do you think you might in the future?
I don't know. I don't feel I have an entrepreneurial mindset, so I get anxious pretty quickly if there's a lot of money involved. So I don't know whether that would be the best thing for me to do. So I'm not actively doing this, and that depends also on the opportunity life offers to you. I'm not. Yeah, I don't feel like I'm the cut for that kind of life, and I'm more excited by other things like than making lots of money.
Sure.
Which is yeah.
Anxious if a lot of money is involved is a good trait for an academic, I think. So you're in good company here.
Maybe.
Let's see. Where were we? Did you get any research experience before you started your PhD? Like maybe during undergrad, or you did a master's too?
During my master's, yes. During my master's, is sort of I started working on some obscure method for stochastic optimization called the microcanonical annealing. It was one of those annealing. Now they're again important because of some of these methods are used in quantum computing. So they use a quantum processor to do quantum annealing, which is one of these examples. So so I wrote a paper with not my thesis advisor, but another professor there, and this got published in one of those IJCNN conferences. And that was in Washington, D.C. And so I went there to present the paper. I kind of enjoyed the experience. So I said, okay, this sounds interesting. And so that was my only research experience before entering the PhD program.
Makes sense. When you entered the PhD, did you know what you wanted to work on day one? Did your thesis advisor give you a topic, or did you sort of flounder a little bit, or how did you find your way?
Yeah, so basically, again, a random walk, right? But my thesis advisor gave me Colt 88 Proceedings.
Like the book. It's a physical book, I guess.
It is a physical book, and it was the first ever Colt, and it was in MIT. And so he gave me this book of proceedings, and he told me, this looks like interesting stuff. Also because there was Valiant involved. And, my thesis advisor was a TCS person, and they knew Valiant from before. machine learning, computational learning, and PAC and everything. So he had a lot of respect. He said, okay, if Valiant is after this thing must be interesting. So let's take a look at it. And so I started reading proceedings, and I said, oh, wow, that's nice. I was attracted by the elegance of the theory. Yeah. So that is how it started.
I see. And so Colt 88 is, you're saying, the first one?
I didn't go. I just had the
yeah.
proceedings,
Yeah.
And then I went to Colt 89 just to check out things.
I see. And where was that?
It was in Santa Cruz.
Okay, nice. And how do you feel? Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask, how do you feel like Colt 88 is different from, Colt Alt nowadays? I guess the vibe has shifted probably a lot, the size.
No, the size was like less than 100 people. In the
So even smaller than this. This has 85 attendees.
Yeah. And basically after, it's like, spending holidays in a small village. After a couple of days, you know everybody, which is a super nice feeling. I love a lot. I like it a lot when I go on holidays on a place, and then after 2 days, the guy from the bakery says hi. This is super nice. And the community, the feeling of the community was exactly like that. So after everybody was friendly. Most people were friendly. Like 99% were friendly. and yeah, so, everybody was kind of new to the field. So there were no big shots. Everybody was kind of like tasting the waters, and so and papers were really simple, nice to read. You could read them and understand everything pretty quickly, and there were few papers around. So at the beginning of my PhD, I would. This is another one of the stories that I keep on telling to people, so that just put. I would carry in my backpack essentially the entire literature on learning theory, and I would keep it in my backpack, because if I had an idea as I was biking, I would say, let me check this paper. Okay, fine. Okay. But it was like, yeah.
I have the same thing right here, I guess, too, right?
Right.
But
true.
not as pleasant to flip through.
That's right. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and do you feel like the entire community showed up to Colt at that point? Like you say, it was like smaller than this, but it was also a small fledgling community. Do you feel like everyone met? Because here, this has been a great time. It's also a much bigger community than what shows up here. But do you feel like that was an annual meeting, so to speak?
Yeah.
Everyone went to.
Everybody went to. People with accepted papers, people with rejected papers. So you could see that the grumpy faces are around, and. But there was a kind of, it was, there weren't many meetings. Eurips was already big, but was bigger than Colt, but definitely not as big as now. And there weren't many other meetings. So it was definitely, something you were looking forward to. Oh, I'm going to meet my friends, and it's going to be in Santa Cruz, so it's going to be very cool. Yeah.
And I think that's a nice thing for a community, in the sense that, like, everyone is going to be there, so everyone goes there, and I think that's nice.
That's right.
I think nowadays somehow life seems like I could go, but I'm busy if I don't have a paper accepted, and it would be nice to go back to those days in some sense where.
Yeah, okay. Another thing was that you would publish maybe 2-3 papers per year. And if you knew that those papers were reasonably good, basically they were going to be accepted, because it was a lot more predictable. Not because, okay, for many factors you can all figure out what are those factors. But one thing is basically, there was a little bit of a thrill, before the notification, but you basically knew that, okay, I have a good paper, it's going to be accepted, fine. And so the first time a paper was rejected, it was like a big shock. It was, oh my God. Yeah.
Makes sense. So you said the first cult you went to was in Santa Cruz, and I also know you spent a lot of time in Santa Cruz, have a lot of collaborations there. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So this is another, yes, this is another story. Right. So I started PhD in Milan, and I wanted to go abroad to do research, and there weren't many, nobody in my department had any collaborations with the learning theory community at the time. So I actually wrote a paper myself and sent it to this conference in 1990. It was in Japan. And I showed up at the conference, and there were, the people from Santa Cruz, Manfred and David Hausler, at the time I was working on learning theory, they were all there. So they, they listened to my presentation, and then we had a chat, and then I asked them, how about I come over to visit, maybe I spend some time with you. And they said, okay, sure, no problem. They were very, very open. And so that's how I started there. So I went there and spent 1.5 years working with that group. And at the same time, Yoav Freund was there. Rob Shapiri was visiting often. Phil Long was there too. So again, it was a very nice, cozy group. We were all friends. We would do all the, the mad things Manfred does in Santa Cruz. He was already doing them at that time. We would, again, do them along with him, like caving and other activities. But we all survived it, and it was a very fun time, yes.
I see. This sounds really exciting, the idea that, all of these people who are now respected legends in learning theory, all being in the same place, working together, very chill time, generally.
Yes, it was kind of the beginning. So this was 91.
91.
Okay, so it was really at the beginning. So it was like being at the right time, right place at the right time. And so, yeah. Lucky me, I don't know. It was, and so it was very inspiring and also very fun.
And how do you feel like your friendships and collaborations with these folks has evolved over the years? Obviously now you're all in different places. I think I haven't done mental accounting, but yeah, you're very much in different places. Do you still manage to collaborate together, or have things changed over time?
Yeah, we don't see very often, but Yoav came over to visit because we spent time in Barcelona. He spent 3 months in Barcelona with Gergo, and he came over to visit me in Milan. So we went, we spent a few days, and then I drove him to Genoa, where he gave a talk, and then we went to my place in Tuscany for the weekend. He was with his wife. So yeah, this doesn't happen very often, almost never happens, but it's cool. We remain friends, and whenever we don't have many opportunities to meet each other, but whenever this happens, yeah, we try to.
I see him at conferences, for example, right?
Sorry?
At conferences? You see each other at conferences too?
Yeah, I mean, right. Yoav doesn't come very often to conferences. Rob a bit more, but also is not very keen on traveling. And myself, I recently, right after the pandemic, I started, shunning Neurips because I said, oh, come on, it's going to be super crowded, and it's so far away, and it's like winter, deep in the winter, it's like a snowstorm, so it's going to be a nightmare. No, I'm not going.
Sure.
So yeah, I like a lot. These meetings are wonderful. And, I think the largest size AI stats, beyond AI stats, starts getting a little bit too big. So you don't get to see people, you don't get to chat to people, and it's just disorienting.
Yeah, I know the feeling. There's a quote, no one goes there anymore, it's too crowded. Cool. I'll ask one more question, then we can turn over to the audience. You've written not only one book, which I mentioned, that was with Gabor Lugosi, right? And then another one with Sebastian Bubek on, it's more of a monograph on optimization of some
No, that's still Bandits.
Oh, Bandits, right. So these are not small endeavors. What inspired you to make these books?
Okay, so if you're working with someone like Gabor or Sebastian, these are wonderful, amazing people, and you know, if there's any opportunity that you know, in the case of Perdition, Burning, and Hell, it was actually Gabor who asked me, why don't we, you know, this is what you're doing is super interesting. We had a nice collaboration on empirical process theory and online learning and prediction with experts, these connections. And so he got more and more interested in online learning. So he asked me, okay, you know, the best thing to really understand the field is to write a book about it. Why don't we write a book together? He had already published the famous Yellow Book. So he had experience in writing a big book. And I said, oh, sure, why not? Sounds like he's still in Barcelona, so it was like a wonderful commute between Milan and Barcelona. And so it's like a matter of opportunities. Again, these things wasn't much planned. We started collaborating with each other, and we realized we got along with each other. And again, also, if you write a book with someone, make sure you like how the person, the writing style of the person, because otherwise it becomes a nightmare. It never happened to me, but I can just imagine, you know, writing what the other person wrote and say, oh my God, you know, I have to rewrite everything from scratch. It must be a nightmare. With Gabor, I challenge you to find the parts he wrote and the parts I wrote, because we have the same kind of writing style, and that was true from day one. We didn't, you know, adapt to each other. It was just so it was just fun. It was like doing something. I was looking forward to do this and to every time, you know, every visit to Barcelona, because it was just fun time.
Good time, yeah. How long did it take you from, you know, the first words on any page to like actually being done? And were there times you felt like it just wouldn't be completed?
No. Okay, so the idea, it really depends. At that time, again, online learning was like a kind of a niche thing. Is that a niche thing again? Still, I don't know exactly. But it was even more niche than now. So we didn't feel pressed. There was nobody, after us. So we started, it took us about 5 years. And in the meantime, we wrote maybe dozen papers, 15 papers. Because, you know, you start writing a chapter, you get a good idea. Oh, let's write a paper. You write a paper, you publish the paper, and then you put the stuff in the book. And so that's a pretty good way of operating, right?
Yeah.
Because so at the end you have the book and you have the papers, and just perfect. So this is at some point when you want to get things done, you sign a contract with the publisher. At that point, you have someone who is after you.
There's a deadline.
Yes,
actually, yeah.
It's not. Yeah, in our case, was like more polite emails. You know, how far are you in the book now? And we would meet at conferences with the editor, which was a very nice lady from Cambridge University Press. We would go out for lunch or dinner, and we would have a chat. So I would report on the book progress. It was not a lot. We at some point we picked up some pace, and at the beginning we were very lazy, and we sort of cared more about publishing stuff rather than writing chapters. But that, after a while, it took us 5 years all in all, okay. Which I think it's not a short time, but it's all time that I really enjoyed. So good. I didn't want to finish it.
Yeah, I feel like academic incentives are often aligned with publishing papers and publishing as many papers as you can nowadays, it seems. But like, I think on the other hand, a book is a better educational resource for the entire world.
Absolutely, so. Absolutely. It's yes, you can find a good author. Don't write it alone, because it's really boring. If you're alone and write a book, it's like a sentence. But if you can find a nice author, just go for it, because it's really a rewarding experience, and you get a lot of recognition. I mean, a lot more than I expected. And then you learn so many things. I've forgotten I forgot most of them, but you really learn a lot of things. And so it's a very pleasant experience if you find the right author.
I can imagine it's very rewarding. For example, like Max earlier today mentioned that he learned swap regret from your book, and that's like, yeah, I think probably there's many people, more people who have that experience and don't tell you. So good. I want to open up to questions from the audience. I've got more here, but figure I want to open it in case people have anything they want to ask Nicolò.
Everybody can ask a question, sure. But Gergo. Yeah. So I'm not the one. There's some other senior guy. So why do you?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll let
you can give me the mic. Okay, thanks for checking. I allow him to ask a question.
I have a very natural question. Do you have any regret?
No, okay, sure. I mean, regrets is like papers about stuff I was thinking about, but I was too lazy to work on. And then someone else did it. And, you cannot do, of course you cannot do everything, but in retrospect, you feel you could have done anything. So it's fine. It's fine. It's good to leave something for the others. So, but many times I say, oh, I could have done this, would have done it maybe better. But that's the thing. Because the many things you had them in your mind, but you were just distracted by thousands of other projects.
Cool.
But yeah, I never regretted discussing something with someone else. So I always test ideas with people to see how they react, whether it's like, what are you want to work on? This sounds crazy, or oh, interesting. So I think I was never like, I was never restrained in talking about half-baked stuff that. And I think this is always nice. I think this community has this good habit. So people always talk about stuff they might want to do, they're thinking about doing, they're not jealous about their ideas, which I think is a very good sign.
Right, a lot of openness and sharing.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. It's not always true.
Not across communities. Cool. Who else wants to ask a question? You can pick.
Oh, Tim. Oh, okay. Fine.
Yeah, so it's a question about how the book came to be. So there are quite many different ways of presenting online learning, of looking at the same things, and you integrate in the book so many different topics and viewpoints. And I imagine, like before the book, that was all scattered throughout the literature. So did you have like a strong view beforehand on how to organize this material, or did you come up with that while writing? Was that difficult to find this unifying perspective?
The main idea is that you want to put in the book what people would be pleased by reading. Okay, so the idea, what Gabor told me on day one, when we were going through, deciding, a little bit of table of contents. It's like put the best stuff, put the pearls. So rather than shooting for some very complete, exhaustive framework, all-encompassing, overly abstract in Banach spaces, just go for the stuff that is interesting and really inspiring. Then you can always find a way of tying things together. You can find a sort of a narrative, but really you want people to be excited by, you don't want to write a treaty. You want to write something that people would read in, as they fall asleep and they say, oh, nice. I mean, I want to keep reading this because it's all a nice idea. It's all cool stuff. So that's the thing. I think in every discipline you have these pearls that are examples that are, super inspiring and very clever, and they point at some directions where you can build on and do progress. So another thing, a book shouldn't be like a closed thing, but should be more an open architecture where people can read it and find new ideas in order to move on. So that's the thing, and it's mostly Gabor that told me, yeah, let's do this. Let's put the best, only the best stuff, nothing else.
No, that's really good advice. Thanks.
I think I thought at least a few more. Who do you want to call on?
No, what's the time?
It's a 3:58.
Okay, we have. Yeah. There's. It was him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait. There's a mic.
What's the work that you're most proud of personally?
I don't know.
Who's your favorite child?
No, I don't know. There's it's definitely the bandy stuff is something that is very well recognized, and it was sort of anticipating. Was something, when we started doing bandits, it wasn't something that people would pay attention to. And it took a long time before it was kind of recognized to be interesting, even industrially, to some extent. So, this is something there's a, it's more like, I cannot point out. This is kind of recognizable, like some kind of contribution that is important and I'm kind of proud of, but there are many other smaller contributions that I am very happy, ideas that I came up with and that I'm happy about. So it's hard to actually to say, oh, this particular paper is like my best one. Yeah.
Other questions? I see Nikita in the back.
Nikita, okay. This is a little word.
You mentioned that you were writing, when you were writing a book with Gabor, you were sometimes, you see that something is missing and you write a paper and then return back and put this into the book. But I heard a recent, I think it was by Michel Telegrand, who mentioned somewhere in some of the interviews that you just directly write the book, so you don't need these papers. If you know what you're doing and if you're kind of famous, so people expect some manuscript from you, and you just directly write the monograph. So what do you think about this approach, when some senior people can lower the number of papers they're writing, but then they use their knowledge and experience and just to create maybe a single masterpiece full of, like your book, of course, like a single masterpiece containing many results, so that future generations of students can learn from them. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So it was a different epoch for us. It was a different stage of career. That was beginning of 2000s. So I was tenured, but I needed papers. I needed a constant output of publications. And Gabor wanted to, to publish in that field because it thought it was interesting, and he wanted to, get there. So.
What do you generally think about having such a?
No, absolutely no. I think yes. I mean, there's definitely not a single style writing a book. You can do it in many different ways, and the book with the stuff I wrote, the monography with Sébastien was different. It was more like trying to give a more systematic view on bandits. That was a different approach. And we already had all the results. We just wanted to present them, and we also did it more quickly. I think I mean, whatever Marcel does is definitely, to be respected. So no, it's something maybe that later in your career, it's more reasonable to write a book in that way. Yeah.
Cool. I think I saw a question over there.
Yeah.
Someone had.
Okay, so from my understanding, you spent most of your career in Milano. Like you did your master's here, you did your PhD here. Well, you visited in Santa Barbara, then you kind of, I guess, you got a position here and you stayed here. So how do you feel about that? Was it like just convenient? Was it what you wanted? Was it random? And is it something that you feel is still a good choice now? Like, is it something you would suggest to your students, for instance, try to stay in the same place, or would you actually push people to move and visit around?
Okay, Milan happens to have lots of universities and lots of opportunities, and I always had the chance to travel. I did my PhD research in Santa Cruz, and then I spent time in Austria. And then more like between 20 and 10 years ago, I always spent the summer in some research lab, Microsoft, Google, and so I tried. I never had the let's say the need of moving because actually. For the longest time, I only wrote papers with people that weren't from Milan, from my department, but not even from any other university in Milan or in Italy at all. So I wrote papers only with people that were abroad. So I think at the beginning, it is very important that you build. Okay, there are two things. One thing is that you should have a working experience abroad because it's important. It's important in your CV. It's important for a number of reasons. But one of the reasons why this is important because you should build a network of collaborators as wide as possible. The more people you work with, the more you learn, the more you have fun, and the more topics you have a chance to work on. So. I think it is paramount to create this and maintain this network of collaborations, whether this implies moving around or or other things. Anyways, at the end you should be able to collaborate with people with many different kinds of people. So that's a kind of and of course some. Work experience abroad is always useful. For me, at the end, I didn't have to move. But if you look at my co-authors, it's as if I were. Now it's easier. Actually, it's a lot easier to collaborate with people that you never meet. Back in those days, you would have to travel a bit. But at the end of the day, I would stay for maybe a month. Or maybe a little bit more, but that was enough and to keep the network alive.
Cool. Any other questions people want to ask?
One more
Yeah, Capio? It's 4:05, so maybe this might be the last question, depending on how long it is. Yeah. I might do one quick one after.
What part of the research process brings you the most joy?
What? No, I didn't get it. Sorry.
What part of research brings you the most joy?
The most joy. Oh, yeah. Well, I guess it depends. So, just at the beginning of your career is figuring out the technical part. And I would, the first PhD students I had was like a nightmare because I would give them a problem, then I would run home and solve the problem before them. Because it's like you cannot think of that. So I'm doing. So that was very, very satisfying. because you're dominating the technical part, you're figuring out, you see the math that is driving you towards the solution. It's very nice, very rewarding, very empowering. And then you start appreciating also the brainstorming part, more like the kind of what are the important problems, what are the models. Designing the model, formalizing a problem is something that you learn later in your career, unless you're forced to learn it earlier. And now this is something that I do like. At the beginning, I didn't like that part. I was more like on the working out the math and seeing all the math opening up under your eyes. That was the most rewarding part. Because you were uncovering truths, which is what we are after, right? So, and let me say that another thing that I keep on repeating, to the extent you can, work on the stuff you really like, and you can, you feel pleasure to work on, do that to the fullest possible extent. It's not always possible, but that is when you can actually do something important because you are enjoying it. And I think that is the biggest driver for doing some good stuff. Okay, more than the money, at least I think.
All right, one last question. There's a lot of junior researchers here and grad students here. You've given a lot of great advice, but if there's one piece of advice you could really emphasize to them, what would your one piece of advice be?
No, this one that I just said.
This one, sure.
I just said that because I didn't want to leave before without saying it.
Sure.
But this was the, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think this has been a nice opportunity to get a look at the man behind the amazing results. Let's thank Nicolò again.
Thank you.